I think you've heard a lot of things, and I don't want to belabor the point. However, one of the first things that I remember is the filming that was taking place when we left South Troy. It was quite an experience because we went from the ridiculous to the sublime. We were coming into an absolutely beautiful home, and we had left South Troy, and I believe it was Sister Verena who was anxious that we leave there because she was very much afraid of fire. And it was basically a fire trap. We had several fire drills, but it was a fire trap. And I firmly believe that we never would have settled this house if it had not been for Sister Verena. She was an absolute general. She was a general, and we were her army. And believe me, we did everything she told us to do. Even when we got to the loading dock from school, she'd give us assignments, and she'd say your aspirations. We're not going to have prayers today. And the other thing that I can remember is when we came into the house, everything seemed to be still packed up, like the cardboard on the tables. The front area of the house had some of the furniture, and Sister Genevieve Greisler, Leon Marie, she unpacked every single piece of furniture and inspected every piece, and then directed the novices where to place the furniture once they got here. That was almost a month or so after we arrived. But then I also remember the chapel was not finished, and that was quite an experience to watch the mosaic go up. I can remember these squares down at the bottom of the mosaic, and it was later that I realized those were the stations, and they were the squares of the stations. I thought they put this block up to form the mosaic. It was very, very interesting to watch the workmen, because this house was far from being finished. There were parts that were finished, but there were many parts that were not finished, and we had to bear with the completion of those things. And the interesting thing, too, is the small chapel was not quite finished either. There were no pews in the small chapel. Now, Lamese has a different memory. The memory that I have is that we brought the chairs from here into the little chapel for Mass. I also remember it was my responsibility to meet Father Keith. Now, I used to meet Father Keith at the front door and bring him up to the little chapel. So we came up this way, and we walked down this way and went to the little chapel. And finally, after about 3 or 4 days, he says to me, "Sister, there is a shorter way." And as everyone said, we've had a great deal of difficulty finding our way around in the house. Many times we had to ask the workmen where we were going or how to get back to where we started. And anyway, what he did is he took me behind the chapel here, the little chapel, went down the back stairs, and went out that way. I mean, it was so funny because I had no idea that there was an exit there, but he did. So anyway, thereafter, he came in that way, and that's the way he left. But he always stayed for breakfast, and Verena, as they said, always made sure that he had his egg. Another funny thing that I remember Verena doing, when we were still in South Troy, she was assigning rooms. And she'd say, "All right, Sister Saline, you're going to be in 311. Sister Patrick, you're going to be in 315. Sister Bridget, Bridget, oh my gosh, how far back am I going? Susan, you're going to be like in 317. And then all of a sudden she stopped and she said, "Do you notice that all the odd ones are on the B wing?" And I think many people don't realize this, that the numbers on the B wing are all odd and the A wing are even. But it was a marvelous, marvelous experience. Another thing I remember is putting those pins in the drapes. Oh, my fingers, whenever I think of that, I can still feel putting those pins in the drapes. It was quite a chore. And what were there, how many windows? And we did that for days and days and days. And Marie Amy's brother was the one that took the film, but the film was the thing that took me. I wish we could find it, because it is so funny. I mean, we're moving in such directions, and basically you can see that we really don't know what we're doing. And we were just struggling to get where we had to go. I think it really was a tremendous experience, and I think any of you that have also gone into a new home, you know there's a lot of work to do. But once it's finished, you really enjoy it. And I was here, I think 3 or 4 years after it opened. And I have never, ever regretted that time, the hard work and the fun that we had. It was a great time. And if you could all have experienced it, it was just a thrilling point in our lives. Much has changed.
Well, I have dozens of memories. I won't get into all of them, but I'll pick and choose here. Susan mentioned window washing. You can't hear me?
Up close.
Susan mentioned window washing. And I had those 20 parlors, and I spent all of Memorial Day washing windows. And 2 weeks later, I had to wash them all over again because there was dirt, no grass, and the dirt floated up, blew into the windows. So I had a double dose of window washing. She also mentioned the telephones. Now for our use, we had one telephone, and that was at the receptionist desk, the portrait station as we called it. And of course, it wasn't that easy to get to the phone. Sister Gertrude Mary, when we were in South Troy, had called her sisters every single night in Troy. So her sisters wanted to have a telephone put in her room. And we said, Sister Gertrude, if you have a telephone put in your room, you might as well move out of your room because you're going to have everybody in the house lined up to use your telephone. So that was the end of that. Let me see. They mentioned the furniture being piled up in the front entrance, and that went on for quite a long time. And during recreation, we would walk around the house to see what had been done during that day, like maybe the pews were in the chapel, or the sea wing was finished a little bit, and so on. One night, a group of us found our way up to the roof of the sea wing. So we're up on the roof, and a helicopter comes along. So we're waving to the man in the helicopter. And the more we waved, the more he kept circling around where we were. Well, basically, we were acting like idiots up there, and the sisters here were looking up at the roof and watching all this going on. Finally, he landed on the ground nearby. Then we found out that he could have been arrested because that was illegal, and so he left after that. Let me see. Sister Leon Marie. I had never heard of a provincial secretary because I was in Syracuse when she was appointed, and I came here, and Mother A had her office, and Jean Marie had hers, and then this Sister Leon Marie. So I said to somebody, what does Sister Leon Marie do all day long? And they said, oh, she collects coupons to get lamps for the desks in all the rooms. So that was my impression of Sister Leon Marie. Well, 2 years later, I was appointed to that job, and I found out that Sister Leon Marie did a lot more besides collecting coupons, but it was very interesting. And on Mother A's feast day, which was May 2nd, you know, in those days, the provincial got a card from every single house in the province. And I remember passing her office, and she didn't have the big desk yet. She had just a small desk, and I can still see it. The desk was piled about that high with cards, and Mother A hadn't gotten to opening them yet. So it's interesting, all these homey little memories that you remember, you know, after all these years. I think maybe I've covered, one other thing. I was at the portrait station one night, and a man arrives, and he wanted